Hollywood's golden age wasn't all glitz and glamour. Behind the velvet curtains, studios buried films that sparked riots, ignited censorship battles, and destroyed careers overnight. These aren't your typical banned movies. These are the ones that vanished so completely, most people don't even know they existed. Which film caused theater owners to flee town? Let's uncover the scandals Hollywood desperately wanted you to forget. Freaks, 1932. Todd Browning's circus nightmare didn't just shock audiences, it made them physically ill. MGM's carnival horror featured real sideshow performers with physical disabilities, and the studio thought they'd created groundbreaking cinema. Instead, they created a PR apocalypse. The wedding feast scene where the performers chant, "One of Us," at the trapeze artist drove viewers to vomit in the aisles. Test screenings ended with women running from theaters, and one woman allegedly suffered a miscarriage from the shock, though this was never confirmed. MGM pulled it from circulation within weeks. The studio cut 30 minutes of footage deemed too disturbing, and those scenes remain lost to history. Britain banned Freaks for 30 years. The film destroyed Browning's career. The man who gave us Dracula with Bela Lugosi suddenly couldn't get hired. His sympathetic portrayal of the performers, showing them as victims of the beautiful people's cruelty, was too radical for Depression-era audiences who wanted their entertainment sanitized. The Freaks exact revenge on the trapeze artist and her strongman lover in ways the original cut showed explicitly before censors demanded cuts. Theater owners received death threats for screening it. MGM locked it in their vault, letting it rot until the 1960s counterculture rediscovered it as a cult masterpiece. Critics who praised it in 1932 were fired. The film lost money, reputation, and nearly every print. Number 14. Ecstasy, 1933. Hedy Lamarr's Czech film became the most notorious movie in America without most Americans ever seeing it. She swims completely bare in a lake for nearly 10 minutes of screen time, and the film includes a scene of her face during intimate moments that censors called obscene. Her husband, an Austrian arms dealer, tried to buy every existing print to destroy them. He spent a fortune hunting down copies across Europe. Pope Pius V condemned it personally. U.S. Customs seized prints at the border, declaring them pornographic contraband. Lamarr fled to America, signed with MGM, and Louis B. Mayer made her swear never to discuss the film. He called it filth and threatened to destroy her career if she mentioned it. The few American theaters that screened Ecstasy faced police raids. Vice squads confiscated film reels mid-showing. In New York, a theater owner was arrested and charged with distributing obscene material. The judge who viewed it called Lamarr's performance shameless. Her career in Hollywood thrived only because MGM buried her past, creating a glamorous image that contradicted her European art film origins. Lamarr later invented frequency hopping technology that helped create Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, but Hollywood only wanted to remember her as a bombshell, not the actress who scandalized 2 continents. Prints became underground collector's items, traded in secret. The controversy made Lamarr both famous and unemployable in European cinema. The Outlaw, 1943. Howard Hughes built his Western around Jane Russell's cleavage, and the censors exploded. He designed a special bra to emphasize her chest, though Russell later admitted she never wore it because it was uncomfortable. The Production Code Administration demanded 108 cuts. Hughes refused every single one. He pulled the film from release rather than compromise, then re-released it years later with provocative advertising that promised more than the film delivered. Billboards showed Russell lying in hay with the tagline, "Mean, moody, magnificent," focusing entirely on her body. Churches organized boycotts before anyone had seen it. the Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it to hell. Hughes fought a 6-year battle with censors, turning the controversy into free publicity worth millions. When it finally premiered in San Francisco in 1943, police monitored theaters for riots. The film itself is a dull Billy the Kid story where Russell's character nurses him back to health. But Hughes marketed it as the most daring film ever made. Newspapers refused to run his advertisements. Theaters that booked it received bomb threats. Hughes appealed the censorship rulings for years, establishing legal precedents about artistic freedom. The Supreme Court eventually sided with Hughes, but by then, the film's reputation had eclipsed its actual content. Russell became a star not for her acting, but for surviving the scandal. The Outlaw proved that controversy could manufacture fame, a lesson Hollywood learned well. Hughes kept fighting censors his entire career, using his wealth to challenge their authority. The film made Russell a household name before most households saw the movie. Scarface, 1932. Howard Hawks and Ben Hecht created a gangster masterpiece so violent that censors demanded a completely different ending. The original had Tony Camonte going down in a blaze of glory, machine gun blazing. Censors forced Hawks to add a moralistic ending where Camonte begs for his life and gets hanged, footage Hawks shot with contempt. The Hays office demanded the subtitle, "Shame of a Nation," be added, turning the film into propaganda against organized crime. Paul Muni's performance as Scarface made Al Capone look like a tragic hero, which terrified authorities. Capone himself tried to buy the film to suppress it, offering Hawks a fortune. Several states banned it completely. Chicago refused to allow screenings, calling it gangster glorification. The film showed machine gun murders with shocking brutality. For its era, bodies dancing as bullets ripped through them. Censors counted the deaths and demanded half be removed. Hawks refused to dilute the violence, arguing it was essential to showing the monster Camonte had become. The relationship between Tony and his sister carried uncomfortable suggestions that censors flagged immediately. The film spent years in legal battles, with different versions released in different territories. Some states only allowed the moralistic cut, while others showed the original ending. Producer Howard Hughes backed Hawks through every fight, spending his own money to preserve the director's vision. Critics loved it. Audiences flocked to it, but morality groups declared war. Scarface influenced every gangster film that followed, from The Godfather to Goodfellas. Brian De Palma remade it 50 years later, keeping the controversy alive. The 1932 version remains a testament to how dangerous cinema felt when it held up a mirror to American violence. Child Bride, 1938. This exploitation film disguised as social commentary featured a 12-year-old girl in scenes that today would result in immediate arrests. The plot pretends to condemn child marriage in the Ozarks while lingering on the young actress in a swimming scene that exists solely for exploitation. The filmmakers claimed they were raising awareness about child marriage laws, but the marketing told a different story. Posters screamed about forbidden love and featured the child actress in provocative poses. State censorship boards rejected it instantly. New York banned it outright, calling it child exploitation masquerading as education. The film toured rural theaters under false pretenses, advertised as a shocking exposé. Police raided screenings and arrested theater owners. The director, Harry Revier, had a history of exploitation films, and Child Bride was his most notorious. The girl's mother later sued, claiming her daughter was traumatized by the production. Revier disappeared from Hollywood after the scandal broke, his career destroyed overnight. Prints of the film were seized and destroyed by authorities in multiple states. The few surviving copies became evidence in obscenity trials. Modern audiences can't believe the film was ever made, let alone released. It represents the absolute worst of pre-code Hollywood exploitation, a stain on cinema history. The film occasionally surfaces in discussions of censorship, always with the caveat that it should never be watched. The actress left Hollywood and lived in obscurity, refusing to ever discuss the film. Child Bride ended the exploitation era's worst excesses, forcing Hollywood to regulate itself more strictly. The Production Code Administration used it as an example of everything cinema should never become. The Youth of Maxim, 1935. This Soviet propaganda film about the 1905 Russian Revolution terrified American distributors so completely that most destroyed their prints voluntarily. The Bolshevik hero Maxim organizes factory workers against their capitalist oppressors with such effectiveness that the U.S. government considered the film a national security threat. Director Grigory Kozintsev created a revolutionary figure so sympathetic that American audiences might start questioning their own economic system. The film never directly calls for American revolution, but the parallels were impossible to ignore during the Depression. Studios that imported Soviet films in the 1930s faced FBI investigations. Theater owners who screened The Youth of Maxim received visits from federal agents questioning their loyalty. The film showed workers seizing factories, organizing strikes, and violently opposing police with justification. Distributors who had purchased rights suddenly couldn't find any theaters willing to screen it. Hollywood's own union battles made the film's message dangerous, as crew members were organizing for better conditions. MGM executives privately admitted the film was brilliantly made but politically toxic. The few American screenings happened in union halls and Communist Party gatherings, which only increased FBI surveillance. Critics who praised its cinematography were accused of communist sympathies. The film's portrayal of class struggle as noble and necessary contradicted every message Hollywood pushed about American prosperity. Kozintsev became one of Soviet cinema's masters, but American audiences never saw his work during his lifetime. The Youth of Maxim disappeared so thoroughly that film historians struggle to find evidence it ever screened commercially in America. The Cold War erased it from cinema history. Prints that survived were locked in university archives, accessible only to researchers. The film's influence on global cinema remained hidden for decades. Convention City, 1933. Warner Brothers created a pre-code comedy so filthy that even the studio begged theaters to return the prints. Joan Blondell and Dick Powell star in a convention farce where businessmen cheat on their wives with showgirls. The film includes references to infidelity, drinking, and situations that implied adult activities with brazen openness. One sequence shows Blondell taking a bath while men discuss watching her, dialogue so explicit that censors went ballistic. The script's double entendres weren't even double, they were single and direct. Warner Brothers pulled Convention City from circulation within months of release, a studio killing its own film. Jack Warner personally ordered every print returned and locked away. The Production Code Administration used it as Exhibit A in their campaign for stricter enforcement. Churches organized such effective boycotts that Warner Brothers feared losing their theater chains. The studio re-edited the film, cutting 20 minutes of the most offensive material. But even the sanitized version couldn't get past censors. Critics who saw it called it hilarious and appalling in equal measure. The New York Times wrote that it made them laugh and blush simultaneously. Warner Brothers lost money and credibility, proving that even in the pre-code era, some lines couldn't be crossed. The film's reputation grew among Hollywood insiders as the wildest comedy ever released by a major studio. Directors whispered about scenes that made executives turn red during screenings. Dick Powell's career nearly ended before it started because of his association with the film. Joan Blondell survived because she was already a star, but even she avoided discussing it. The complete uncut version was thought destroyed until a print surfaced in the 1990s, revealing just how wild pre-code Hollywood truly was. Hedy, 1966. Andy Warhol's underground film featuring Hedy's story pushed experimental cinema into territory that mainstream theaters refused to touch. The film includes graphic content and situations that made even New York's art house circuit uncomfortable. Warhol shot it in his factory, using non-actors and improvised dialogue that veered into shocking territory. The film's portrayal of alternative lifestyles and frank discussions of adult topics made it impossible to screen in conventional venues. Police raided the few theaters brave enough to show it, arresting projectionists and seizing prints. Warhol faced obscenity charges in multiple cities, spending thousands on legal fees defending his artistic vision. Critics divided sharply between those who saw it as avant-garde brilliance and those who called it garbage. The film's deliberately crude aesthetic, shot in grainy black and white, made it feel more transgressive than glossy Hollywood productions. Warhol argued that he was documenting reality, not creating entertainment, but prosecutors didn't care about artistic intent. The film became a rallying point for freedom of expression debates in the 1960s. Underground newspapers championed it, while mainstream media condemned it without seeing it. Theaters that showed Warhol films became targets for vice squads looking to make examples. The director's growing fame made the controversy worse, as his celebrity brought unwanted attention to the underground scene. Hedy vanished from circulation as Warhol moved toward more commercial projects. The film exists now mostly as a footnote in discussions of censorship and the limits of experimental cinema. Prints rarely surface, and when they do, venues carefully consider the legal implications before screening. Warhol never regretted making it, but he stopped pushing boundaries so aggressively after the legal battles. The film represents a moment when counterculture directly challenged mainstream morality, and mainstream morality won. Two-Faced Woman, 1941. Greta Garbo's final film ended her career because censors decided her character's behavior was immoral. She plays a woman who pretends to be her own twin sister to seduce her husband and test his fidelity. The Catholic Legion of Decency condemned it as an affront to marriage. MGM reshot scenes and added dialogue, clarifying that the husband knows it's his wife all along, destroying the entire premise. The re-edited version made no sense, and critics savaged it. Garbo, Hollywood's greatest actress, retired immediately at age 36. The original version suggested that the husband was willing to cheat on his wife with her twin, a plot point censors found unforgivable. Religious groups organized boycotts so effective that MGM panicked and recalled prints. The studio spent a fortune recutting and redistributing the film, but the damage was done. Garbo's mystique evaporated overnight. The woman who had been untouchable for a decade suddenly couldn't survive one scandal. She gave no farewell, made no final statement, simply stopped making films. MGM executives begged her to return for years, offering her any project she wanted. She refused every offer, retreating into private life in New York. The controversy around Two-Faced Woman proved that even legends weren't safe from censorship. The original cut was thought lost until film historians reconstructed it decades later, revealing a sophisticated comedy destroyed by prudish censors. Garbo's performance shows her comedic range, something her dramatic roles never fully displayed. The film's failure haunted everyone involved. Director George Cukor blamed the censors for ending Garbo's career. MGM blamed themselves for not protecting their biggest star. The film remains a tragic what-if in cinema history, the project that killed a legend. The Callahans and the Murphys, 1927. This silent comedy about feuding Irish families caused riots in American cities with large Irish populations. MGM thought they were making a harmless slapstick about ethnic stereotypes, the kind Hollywood produced regularly. Instead, they sparked such outrage that theater owners fled town. The film portrayed Irish characters as violent drunks who solve problems with fists and bottles. Irish-American groups organized protests before it even opened. In Boston, a theater showing it was vandalized, the screen slashed with knives. In Chicago, protesters threw stink bombs into theaters, forcing evacuations. Police had to escort theater owners to safety. MGM pulled the film from circulation within days, issuing public apologies. The controversy made national headlines, forcing Hollywood to reconsider how it portrayed ethnic groups. The studio destroyed most prints, hoping to erase the incident from history. Director George W. Hill never recovered from the scandal, his career permanently damaged. The film's star, Marie Dressler, survived only because she was already established. MGM learned that ethnic stereotypes, even in supposedly harmless comedies, could destroy their business. The incident led to more careful vetting of scripts for potentially offensive content. Irish-American advocacy groups gained power in Hollywood, able to influence productions for decades. The Callahans and the Murphys became shorthand for Hollywood's casual bigotry in the silent era. Film historians struggle to find complete prints, as the studio's destruction campaign was so thorough. The Man Who Laughs, 1928. Conrad Veidt's grotesque grin inspired the Joker, but Universal's horror romance was too disturbing for late 1920s audiences. Veidt plays Gwynplaine, a man whose face was surgically mutilated as a child, leaving him with a permanent, horrifying smile. The makeup was so unsettling that preview audiences walked out. Universal marketed it as a romance, which made the experience worse for viewers expecting a love story. The film shows a freak show performer who finds love despite his disfigurement, but audiences couldn't see past the horror. Theater owners complained that the film was clearing their houses, with patrons demanding refunds. Universal pulled it from wide release, limiting it to select cities. Critics praised Veidt's performance, but admitted the film was hard to watch. The actor spent hours in makeup daily, and the prosthetics caused him genuine pain. The character's permanent smile while experiencing tragedy creates an awful disconnect that disturbed viewers. The film flopped financially, costing Universal a fortune. Veidt left Hollywood shortly after, returning to German cinema. The Man Who Laughs remained a curiosity for decades, seen as too artistic and too disturbing for mainstream success. Film scholars rediscovered it in the 1960s, recognizing its influence on horror cinema. Tim Burton cited it as inspiration for Batman. The film's expressionist visuals influenced noir cinematography. But in 1928, it was simply too much. Audiences wanted escapism during the Depression's approach, not meditations on human cruelty. Universal learned that horror needed boundaries, leading to their more sanitized monster movies in the 1930s. The film exists now as a masterpiece of silent cinema that almost nobody saw when it mattered. Blockade, 1938. Walter Wanger's Spanish Civil War drama became so controversial that theaters refused to advertise it properly. Henry Fonda stars as a Spanish farmer fighting fascists, and the film's sympathies are clearly with the Republican side. Conservative groups exploded, accusing Hollywood of communist propaganda. The Catholic Church condemned it because the film portrayed Catholic nationalists as villains. Protests erupted at theaters with picket lines and threats of violence. MGM pulled its distribution support, leaving Wanger scrambling. The film never explicitly names the sides in the conflict, a cowardly compromise demanded by censors. But everyone knew which side the heroes represented, and that was enough. The American Legion organized boycotts. Catholic bishops threatened to excommunicate Catholics who saw it. Wanger, a politically active producer, stood by the film but couldn't force theaters to screen it. The few showings that happened drew protesters who shouted at audiences entering theaters. Critics praised its courage while admitting it would never find an audience. The Spanish Civil War divided Americans bitterly, and Blockade poured gasoline on those divisions. Fonda later said he regretted making it because it harmed more than it helped. The film's message about fascism's dangers was prescient, but American audiences in 1938 weren't ready. Isolationist sentiment made any foreign conflict film suspicious. Wanger's career survived, but he never tackled such controversial material again. The film disappeared for decades, surfacing only in film archives. Modern viewers recognize its bravery, but also its compromise, the refusal to fully commit to its politics. Blockade represents Hollywood's failed attempt to engage with global fascism before World War II made taking sides unavoidable. Lolita, 1962. Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of Nabokov's controversial novel was butchered by censors before release. The film about a middle-aged man's obsession with a young girl faced impossible standards. Kubrick shot it in England to avoid American censors, but he still had to remove most of what made the novel shocking. The girl's age was raised, scenes were cut, and the relationship's nature was obscured through editing. What remained was a psychological thriller that hinted at darkness without showing it. Censors still demanded more cuts. James Mason's performance as Humbert suggests everything the film can't show, creating tension through implication. Sue Lyon was 14 during filming, which sparked controversy despite the sanitized content. Theaters received bomb threats. Religious groups organized protests, calling for the film's ban. Nabokov hated Kubrick's adaptation, feeling it betrayed his novel's complexity. Critics were divided, some praising Kubrick's artistry, others condemning the subject matter regardless of execution. The film's financial performance was weak, as controversy kept audiences away. Kubrick regretted compromising his vision, later admitting he couldn't have made the film honestly in 1962 America. The studio cut different versions for different markets, with European prints, including scenes American audiences never saw. The film's reputation improved over decades, but it remains uncomfortable viewing. Adrian Lyne's 1997 remake attempted a more faithful adaptation and faced even worse treatment. Kubrick's Lolita exists as a compromised masterpiece, a glimpse of what could have been if censorship hadn't forced his hand. The film proved that some novels are unfilmable in their true form, at least in commercial cinema. 2. Baby Doll, 1956. Elia Kazan's Southern Gothic about a child bride and sexual obsession earned a condemned rating from the Catholic Church, the only major Hollywood film ever to receive that classification. Carol Baker plays the 19-year-old virgin wife of a middle-aged man waiting for her 20th birthday to consummate their marriage. The film's atmosphere drips with adult tension. The Catholic Legion of Decency declared it evil, warning Catholics that seeing it was a mortal sin. Cardinal Spellman denounced it from the pulpit, urging boycotts. Kazan refused to cut a single frame, backed by Warner Brothers in a rare show of courage. Theaters in Catholic neighborhoods refused bookings, fearing church retaliation. The film's poster, showing Baker in a crib sucking her thumb, became iconic and scandalous. Critics loved it, calling it Kazan's best work. Tennessee Williams wrote the screenplay, adapting his own one-act plays, and his dialogue sizzles with suggestion. Eli Wallach plays the seducer who manipulates Baby Doll while her husband burns with jealousy. The film's treatment of desire and innocence was too honest for 1950s morality. Warner Brothers stood by Kazan through boycotts and protests, losing money but gaining respect. The controversy cemented Kazan's reputation as an uncompromising artist. Baby Doll influenced later Southern Gothic films, proving audiences would accept darker material if it was well crafted. The Catholic Church's condemnation gave it notoriety that helped it survive. Modern audiences see it as tame, but in 1956, it represented everything conservative America feared about Hollywood. Kazan never backed down, and the film remains a testament to artistic integrity over commercial safety. Birth of a Nation, 1915 D.W. Griffith's Civil War epic revolutionized cinema and ignited race riots across America. The film's technical innovations in storytelling and cinematography are undeniable, its racist content equally undeniable. Griffith portrayed the Ku Klux Klan as heroes and freed slaves as villains, creating propaganda so effective it revived the real KKK. The NAACP organized protests before it opened. Race riots erupted in Boston, Philadelphia, and other cities where it screened. White audiences cheered while black audiences faced violence. Woodrow Wilson screened it at the White House, reportedly saying, "It's like writing history with lightning." That presidential endorsement legitimized its toxicity. Griffith spent the rest of his career defending the film, claiming he was showing history accurately. The film made a fortune, becoming the highest-grossing movie for decades. Its success proved that technical mastery couldn't excuse moral bankruptcy. Cities banned it. Others allowed it with armed police in theaters. The controversy followed Griffith until his death, overshadowing his other work. Birth of a Nation directly led to thousands joining the KKK in the 1920s, causing real-world violence. Film historians face an impossible tension: its essential cinema history and reprehensible racist propaganda. Every film student studies its techniques while condemning its message. The film never truly vanished, but its screenings became increasingly rare and contextualized. Modern showings require historical framing and discussion. Griffith's attempt at redemption, intolerance, flopped financially. Birth of a Nation remains cinema's original sin, a reminder that art's power can serve evil as easily as good. The film destroyed lives, inspired hatred, and changed cinema forever. Old Hollywood's buried scandals reveal an industry terrified of its own power. These films didn't just push boundaries. They exploded them so violently that studios preferred financial loss over moral controversy. Each vanished film represents a moment when art collided with society's limits, and society won. Which of these would you risk watching? Some stayed hidden for good reason. Others were casualties of outdated morality. Drop your thoughts below. Do these films deserve resurrection, or should some scandals stay buried? Here's the real question. If Hollywood censored itself this brutally a century ago, what are they hiding from us now?